Meeting the Beast.
Alistair Crowley had returned to London. In a world where blacks and whites were breaking up so fast into various shades of grey, the Beast was the last of the graven images, an obsidian monolith of evil. At last, I would see what the devil incarnate looked like. He was not bald entirely. In certain parts, his hair was closely shaven, and elsewhere his hair had been allowed to grow slightly longer. Those were the Kabbalistic tufts I had heard spoken of. They were, I thought, a shade too reticent to be fully effective, but perhaps it was a ritual modification for town wear. "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," he remarked, quoting from one of his own magical books. "Love is the law," I said in what I hoped was a casual voice. "Love under will." I knew this was the expected response. He was a large, heavy man, and he sat down faster than he got up. He had a paunch, I noticed. In youth or middle manhood, he might have looked remarkable, but the stamp of age had obliterated his individual pattern. He had the same dewlaps as actors who play corrupt senators in American films, a skin that was as rough as a calf's tongue, and a tired, used face sagging with satiation. The only thing which set him aside from others who had lived not wisely but too well was the upward twist, a conscious Mephistophelian touch which he had given to his eyebrows and which drew attention to his eyes. These must at some time have been powerful. I could imagine that the stories I had heard of his hypnotic powers had once been true. "How did you come to be interested in magic?" he said. I told him that I had known Vicky Bird for many years. "Ugh, a weakling," he said. "I expect he's told you a lot of lies about me." "He says that you have great magical powers," I answered, "but that you have consistently abused them." "Ah," he said, "he's a neurotic. You know, we ought to have a long talk sometime. Why not come down to my place in the country? There are matters of grave import that we should discuss together." I decided to take him at his word, but I went with a friend for support. We had driven through the purlieus of southeast London and had emerged in bleak sunlight into the dank fields of North Kent. "I don't know why we're going to see this black magician, do you?" said my friend Eleanor. "A cinema would have been warmer and probably funnier." It was clear that the Beast had rented the weekend residence of some spinster of moderate means and ghastly good taste at a nominal rent for the off-season. What pleasure he had at seeing me was overlaid by his surprise at the presence of Eleanor. He went into the living room, leaving us to follow. By the time I had joined him, he had opened the door onto a winding oak staircase and was calling up in a tongue I did not understand. The room above was separated only by oak boards laid over beams, and in our room it sounded as if a fawn was trotting backwards and forwards over our heads. From the noise, it was clear that the fawn was trying to come down the staircase, but finding it difficult. Eleanor and I looked at one another, prepared for the appearance of almost any familiar. The door creaked open, and on the bottom stair for a moment, framed in the doorway like a full-length picture, stood one of the most remarkable women that I have ever seen. She wore a black and white satin dress which lubriciously emphasized the exuberance of her hips and bust. Its singular chic brought into the living room of that furnished cottage during the off-season the brilliance of Rio de Janeiro in the sunlight. Black openwork stockings and tapering 4-inch heels gave the illusion of slenderness and length to typically robust South American Indian legs. "My wife," said the Beast. "She is Brazilian, but she has a little English." "How are you?" asked the Beast's wife. She held out a plump,
white hand whose stubby fingers had been lengthened by sculptured talons lacquered the red of Venus blood. Even in Brazil she would have seemed exotic, but in Knockholt in December she was fantastic. Standing by Eleanor with her long, clean body, her finely cut and scarcely made-up features, she was like one of the extravagant dolls which tarts keep on their beds. I turned back to the lover of truth and beauty. His ventral muscles, like perishing elastic, were sagging worse than ever. "Calder Marshall and I have matters to discuss," he said to his wife. Then he turned to Eleanor. "Now that it has turned fine, I expect that you would like my wife to show you around the estate." Eleanor looked bleakly through the cottage window at a garden patch on which the winter sun shone without conviction, at the yellowing Brussels sprouts, the rain-soaked broccoli, and the mud. "Moment," said the Brazilian. "I change my shoes, yes?" The 4-inch heels clattered up the stairs and over our heads. "Is the estate very large?" asked Eleanor. "You can walk for miles," said the beast brightly. "It isn't mine, of course." The heels clattered down the stairs again, but this time they were 5 inches in height. "Is better, yes?" she asked Eleanor. As soon as he had sent the women out, the beast locked the door. Then he went to a cupboard and took out 2 glasses and a bottle of brandy. He poured 2 stiff brandies and handed me what looked like 2 inches of coarse grass doubled over at each end. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "Brazilian cigarette," he said. "Purest tobacco in the world." It certainly had the highest nicotine content. As I sucked the dry maize husk desperately to keep it alight, a repulsive stream oozed onto my lips and fingers. "Drink up," he said. I drank up, and he poured 2 more brandies. "You have great possibilities. You know nothing, of course, but at your age that doesn't mean anything. That will come with time and experience." He leaned forward with his elbows on the table. I suddenly realized he was trying as quickly as possible to hypnotize me. "Have another brandy," he said, raising the bottle without looking away from me and filling my glass, but not his. I drew my chair into the table and leaned forward on my elbows gradually so that our eyes were only about a foot apart. His eyes, weak and rather rheumy, were trying desperately to shine, like the bulb of a torch whose battery is failing. I had cherished the idea of a devil incarnate for 6 years as a relic of childhood, and it had stood up to every test except meeting the beast himself. And now this attempt to hypnotize me with the aid of brandy produced a revulsion in me against the childishness which I had pampered all these years. All it amounted to was this shagged and sorry old gentleman trying to outstare me across the table. "Would you like to work with me?" he asked. "There is only one thing I want to do, and that is to write well," I said. "You have been practicing magic for a long time, but your movement has produced no literature." "You have read my work," he said. "I have. They may be wonderful as magic, but I can't believe that anything which is so badly written could be." I found that I was being more and more rude to the beast before I realized that for all these years I had been looking for Milton's idea of Satan, a figure of pure evil, and that this impure character trying rheumily to hypnotize me was the genuine article. Evil was never pure. I began to let myself go. The brandy with which he plied me at a remarkable speed provided me with a fire and justification for attack. But he didn't mind. "You are really interested in magic, but you're afraid. That is why you're saying these things. I've heard it so often. Why don't you just stay till tomorrow morning? There's such a lot to talk about, and there's plenty of brandy." A handful of hail struck the window, and in a moment there was a rattling at the back door. I opened the door as the rain came pouring down. La Senora and Eleanor tumbled into the room. "What on earth have you been doing all this time?" Eleanor said. I looked across at the old man bent over the table with the brandy bottle at his elbow. He was scowling as much at me as at Eleanor. "What would you say we have been doing, sir?" I asked. "I'd say I've been wasting my time," he said, and he picked up the brandy bottle and carried it to the cupboard. "But at least, sir," I said, "I must thank you for saving a great deal of mine." After the session at Knot Holt, the mask of evil was broken. I didn't care tuppence whether he had deliberately possessed Vicky Bird with Mars in 1912. In December 1929, he was, for me, little better than a peddler of spells as phony as quack medicine. Crowley might design the most bizarre surroundings for his rites, but I am most susceptible to magic among the commonplace. I remember once, when on a walk by myself across the downs between Stirling and Lancing, I came upon a valley which I had never seen before. It was narrower than most in the Sussex hills, with abrupt sides and tangled with coarse grass, from which, as I descended, rabbits bolted momently like small brown explosions. It ran from east to west in a winding course, and I knew that if I followed it downward, I should at last come to the Bramber Lancing in the broad valley of the Adur. I knew this, and yet as I stumbled over the rank tufts with only rabbits for company, and high above in the blue a singing lark tossed like a scrap of paper glinting in the sun, there came to me a suspicion which grew with alarming speed into a conviction that when I reached the last turn of the valley, I should look not on the green meadows of the Adur, but on the blue sea. At first, I was filled with strange excitement. I began to run forward, jumping from tuft to tuft. I thought I could hear distant waves breaking on a pebbled beach, sucking shingle down as they receded. I caught in my nostrils the sharp tang of salt. My heart exulted with miraculous delight. There had been sea at the mouth of that valley once, but that was centuries ago. Had I, in this deep, unusual valley, teeming with rabbits, somehow fallen through a pocket in time? I listened, and the noise of breakers was not quite distinct, as if the shore was just around the next bend. I had merely to go another 100 yards to see it for myself. But fear caught me. I got up and climbing the steep wall of grass, clutching at tufts with my fingers to prevent myself falling, and I didn't stop until I reached the flat top of the hill, where I flung myself on the short-cropped turf, breathless but safe in the 20th century, with the lark still trilling overhead. I thought later that I had been a fool, a coward, and the next day I set out for the valley again, telling myself that I should allay my fears by discovering where it ended, but in reality wanting to experience again that feeling of primeval terror descending from the urbane pasture into that wild ravine. But neither of my aims was satisfied. Though I searched then and often afterwards, I never found that valley again.
Alan Rickman was reading from The Magic of My Youth by Arthur Calder Marshall, abridged in 5 parts by David Burke. The producer was Marilyn Inry.